Canto 6 of Book 3 of The Fairy Queen almost takes a complete break from plot development, but it does an important structural thing. It brings us to the long, extended description of Venus's garden, the Garden of Adonis. Do you remember Venus and Adonis? Have we heard their story before? Yes, we have. We saw their story on tapestries in Malacasta's castle in Canto 1. Now, just about exactly at the halfway point of Book 3, we are back to the Venus and Adonis story, and we're going to go into it in even more depth. Did you like Belphoebe? Do you enjoy her? Good, because she's got a sister. We're going to stop and tell this story about how this chaste virgin was born, and it is bananas. It's crazy. Her mother, Belphoebe's mother, Chrysogene, the golden one, is just napping, naked, in some gorgeous sunshine, and the sunshine impregnates her. Now, Spencer is working with a tradition from mythology and from what he would consider religion, the religion he believed in, as opposed to the Greek and Roman religion, which were defunct, which involves all kinds of these miraculous impregnations. Various mythological heroes and other important people, prophets, messiahs, are held to have been born through a woman who's been impregnated without a man being involved. What's really interesting here, I would point out, is usually those stories are about the miraculous conception of male heroes, godlings, prophets, etc. That you got twin daughters out of it is a little different. So that happens. We have Belphoebe, whom we know, and we have her twin sister, Amoretta. Where is that first? Who get divided up. And then, as usually happens, the goddesses Venus and Diana, a chaste goddess, and Venus, the goddess who's the least chaste of the goddesses. She is the goddess of love and the goddess of sex. They happened by. Stanza 28. Up they them took, each one a babe uptook, and with them carried to be fostered. Dame Phoebe to a nymph her babe betook, to be upbrought in perfect maidenhead, and of herself her name Belphoebe read. But Venus hers thence far away conveyed, to be upbrought in goodly womanhead, and in her little love stead, which was strayed, her Amoretta called, to comfort her dismayed. Amoret is here imagined as a replacement for the missing Cupid, who is the story excuse for Venus wandering by in the first place. Amoretta, as your footnote tells you, is a feminized version of Little Love. Cupid is a little love. Spencer's own series of love sonnets are called the Amoretti, the little loves. Amoret, is like an embodiment of one. She uses the name for her that he uses for his sonnets, written around the same time he was writing The Fairy Queen. Okay, that's all very strange. It also put out there's some instability. One is being brought up in perfect maidenhead, the other in goodly womanhead. Shouldn't those two things go together? Isn't there some tension? Spencer's suggesting there is some tension between perfect maidenhead and goodly womanhood, and he's not interested in resolving. Instead, he's going to have two characters who are sisters, separated at birth, live in very different styles of love. And Amoret is, of course, only in love with the knight Scudamore, whose name means shield of love. We're just generating more and more characters midway through Book 3. They're just proliferating like we're in the infinitely fertile and generative Garden of Adonis. Let's talk about the Garden of Adonis. We have a long description, a digression maybe, or, as often happens with Spencer, an exploration of an imaginary place that tells us something about the world and about ideas, though the plot doesn't move forward. Instead of thinking of these things as slowing down the plot, think of the plot, all the kind of quests everybody's on, as just a way to get them around between these places. Because that's partly what's going on. So, we have, oh my goodness. We have from, so let's start at stanza 33. We have a lengthy description of Venus's garden, the Garden of Adonis, which is presented here as a place of enormous fertility, where actually everybody comes from and everybody dies and goes back to. This sounds all very pagan. Let's stop here. Hey, what are all these pagan gods and goddesses doing in this Christian poem? Well, the answer is Spencer is educated in a tradition that values these classical authors, and they're not considered threats anymore because there are no practicing Roman or Greek pagans anymore. Nobody is worshiping Mercury anymore, not for real, so it doesn't matter if you put them in the art, so he isn't worried about them. Doesn't Christianity hold that all these people don't exist? Yeah, it does, but in this fiction, here they are, and they're going around, they're not God, but they're gods. They're part of the epic machinery. So Spencer is going to let himself and us enjoy them. What's really strange is we have here a description of a place where you go when you die, which has nothing to do with Christian stories about where you go when you die. Really, none at all. With a self-consciously Christian poem writing his self-consciously Christian moral epic, we have a long description of a place where everybody goes back to when they die and then comes back again in another form, with reincarnation, which is not taught in Christianity, certainly not in Spencer's flavor of 16th century Protestantism. 33. After that they again returned Ben, they in that garden planted be again. After that they again returned been, they in that garden planted be again, and grow afresh, as they had never seen fleshly corruption nor mortal pain. Some 1,000 years so doing they remain, and then of him are clad with other hue, or sent into the changeful world again, till thither they return where first they grew. So like a wheel around they run, from old to new. 34. It needs their garden to set or sow or plant or prune, for of their own accord all things as they created were do grow, and yet remember well the mighty word, which first was spoken by the Almighty Lord, which bade them to increase and multiply. That do they need with water of the ford, or of the clouds to moisten their roots dry, for in themselves internal moisture they imply. Okay, it's a land of complete fruitfulness. It is a garden of fertility. Our love goddess is a fertility goddess, not just in a sexual fertility way, though this is really the book of fertility. How much is about fertility? Someone can get pregnant just napping. Twins. You took a nap, you're pregnant with twins, and it's totally miraculously painless. Wow. In the same way, the Garden of Adonis is like what we will see Milton describe the Garden of Eden being like. It is a pre-lapsarian, a pre-fallen world where you don't have to work, where the fruit just comes down, where there aren't seasons. We'll actually discuss, it's always spring there, but also everything's also ready to harvest. It's spring and fall. It's harvest and spring, fruit and flowers together, which is botanically impossible, but it's happening. It's all happening in the Garden of Adonis, where everything happens. And you see in stanza 34, we throw an reference to the Almighty. The Almighty said, be fruitful and multiply, which is a nice fig leaf to cover up the fact that we are way outside any kind of Orthodox Christianity. This is not the idea that you die and go to Venus's garden and then come back in another body is totally not the Christian program. Stanza 35. Infinite shapes of creatures there are bred, and uncouth forms which none yet ever knew. And every sort is in a sundry bed, set by itself, and ranked in comely rue. Some fit for reasonable souls to endue, some made for beasts, some for birds to wear. And all the fruitful spawn of fishes hew, and endless ranks along and ranged were, that seemed the ocean could not contain them there. It's full of every possible shape. And what really interests Spencer here is the infinite possibility, the multiplicity of forms. Spencer is interested in, he's really going to town here, he's interested in mutability, changeability, transformation, and the multiple different kinds of shapes. This is the garden of transformation, of regrowth and rebirth, and a kind of infinite variety where everything can happen. Man, this is the poem where everything happens, as crowded, as full of different forms as it could be, as fertile as Spencer's teeming imagination. But I would be remiss. I want to read a bunch of stanzas in a row for you. The extended description of the Mount of Venus. Venus's mound. And your editor in the footnote helpfully points out the mound of Venus is also a medical term for a part of the lady. A part of the lady that gentlemen do not possess anatomically themselves. Let's describe that mound. I'm going to read one stanza, go over it, then we're going to read a few more stanzas. Stanza 43. Right in the midst of that paradise, there stood a stately mount, on whose round top a gloomy grove of myrtle trees did rise, whose shady boughs sharp steel did never lop, nor wicked beasts their tender buds did crop, but like a garland compassed the height, and from their fruitful sides sweet gum did drop, that all the ground with precious dew bedight, that threw forth most dainty odors and most sweet delight. Okay, this is the poem about chastity. Here's a description that is enormously sexually suggestive. As I said in the last video about Canto 5, Spenser tends to go both ways. Right here in the middle of that paradise, right there in the middle of the paradise. That is a heterosexual cis man's version of paradise. Right there, the female pudenda, the female pubic mound. There's growth on it, there's vegetation up there. The vegetation's never been cut, that would be wrong. I would look at, why is it a gloomy grove of myrtle trees? Why is it so sad? Gloomy, huh? Shady boughs. But it's never been cut with sharp steel, never been chewed up by wicked beasts, but like a garland. And from their fruitful sides sweet gum did drop, that all the ground with precious dew bedight, that threw forth most dainty odors and most sweet delight. So there's a kind of secretion of sweet-smelling gum like off trees, and it smells wonderfully fragrant. If you can't read the sexual double entendre here, you got to get your English major game together. I'm not saying that's the only way to read it. I'm saying it's hard not to read it. He said Mound of Venus, and they did this. Spenser's many things. He is not stupid. He knows exactly what he did here. Even if it's not what he set out to do, he knows he did. Okay. And in the thickest covert of that shade there was a pleasant arbor, not by art, but of the tree's own inclination made, which knitting their rank branches part to part, with wanton ivy twine trailed athwart, and eglantine and caprifol among, fashioned among with their inmost part, that neither Phoebus' beams could through them throng, nor Aeolus' sharp blast could work them any wrong. Okay, the trees themselves have voluntarily created this arbor that the sun won't go through, which is always bad in Spenser, or suspect. But the wind can't come through. It's shelter. It's the shady bower. It's a bower to have sex in because no one can see you. There's no sun. And all about grew every sort of flower, to which sad lovers were transformed of yore. Fresh hyacinthus, Phoebus' paramour, foolish narcissa, that likes the watery shore, sad amaranthus, made a flower but late, sad amaranthus in whose purple gore, meseems I see a Mintus, wretched fate, to whom sweet poets' verse have given endless date. There wont fair Venus oft to enjoy her dear Adonis' joyous company, and reap sweet pleasure of the wanton boy. There yet, some say, in secret he does lie, lapped in flowers and precious spicery, by her hid from the world, and from the skill of Stygian gods, which do her love envy. But she herself, whichever that she will, possesses him, and of his sweetness take her full. And sooth it seems they say, for he may not forever die, and ever buried be in baleful night, where all things are forgot, but be he subject to mortality, yet is eterna immutability, and by succession made perpetual, transformed off and changed diversely. For him the father of all forms they call, therefore needs must he live, that living gives to all. Let's stop right there. Deeply unchristian. Here we have Adonis's mortal immortality, where he's a mortal person, he dies, but he lives forever by constantly changing, and is generative, is a fertility god for the rest of us. We're really zoning in on this classical myth, which is defunct, which nobody in 1590 believes anymore, not for 1,000 years and more. We have that description on line 45, that list of flowers. Those are all sad lovers who get turned into flowers in the great Roman poet Ovid's book Metamorphoses. If you don't like Ovid's Metamorphoses, Spenser and Shakespeare, think you're wrong. They love it, and it is a staple of the kind of pre-college educational curricula of the Elizabethans. The thing you did before college, grammar school, which is the thing before university, is just chock full of Ovid and his Metamorphoses. And then we have this fantasy, like it's a nice vision. Like we're not judging Venus here for a second. We're very judging in this poem about illicit love, but Venus gets her boy forever, and we're cool with that. It's a nice thought. So we're at the halfway point. I thought this was about chastity. Halfway through, we're celebrating the goddess of love and her super pagan bohunk, totally outside Christian orthodoxy. What the hell happened? Ed, can you get it back? We're going to have to trust Ed and Ed's prodigious, fertile imagination.